Hi, I'm Jamey from Stonemaier Games, and today I'm really excited to talk to you about Disney Lorcana, the new trading card game from Ravensburger. I should say that I am talking about this game as someone who designs games, as someone who publishes games, but particularly I'm approaching this as someone who just wants to play what I hope would be a fun game. And it is. I'm having fun with this game. Not as a collector. I think that's a whole other element of collectible card games, but you don't have to play that way. You can also just play these games for fun at home, and that's exactly what we've been doing. I went to a game store, a local game store, Fortuna Games here in St. Louis, and waited in line a little bit, even at their opening on Friday, to get a few starter packs. I got one of each of the starter packs, and I got a Trove, which gives you 8 booster packs as well. And I'll talk about them in a second. We've been opening them, I think, in a pretty fun way. We've played 3 games so far with some deck building in between. We just basically opened up the starter packs. I started with this one, the red and green pack. And what was interesting is that each of the colors, the 6 colors in the game, has a very different flavor to it. And I found rather quickly that I was mostly interested in the lore mechanism and kind of some Euro-style mechanisms rather than the fighting that happens in the game, because there is some fighting, some challenging in the game, as they call it. And I found that blue is a color that resonates with me. Blue is a color in this game that speeds up your progress and that gives you a lot of lore. Purple is great for drawing cards, and so blue and purple are probably the colors that I am looking to play. Currently, the deck that I have is purple, you can see here, and where are some of the gray cards. There's some gray cards in this deck, so you have 2 colors per deck. Let me talk about 2 mechanisms that I really, really love in particular, and then I'll talk about a few other little things about the game that I'm enjoying. The first thing that I think is really, really clever about this game is that actually, I have 2 things I want to see. Which one I want to say first? I'll talk about lore first. So lore is this little mechanism down here. So one of the things you can do if you have a character in play who didn't just come into play this turn is that you can go questing. And questing just means gain 2 lore. The point of the game, the way to win the game, is to gain 20 lore. And so at first glance, this might sound a little bit, maybe even a lot like Magic the Gathering. And that's okay. You're trying to get to, rather than reducing an opponent's life from 20 to 0, you're trying to gain 20 lore. I think the key difference here, though, is that in Magic, the life that you're removing from your opponent, the 20 life, is related to these stats. This is your character's attack and their defense over here. So in Magic, you attack, and if your opponent doesn't block, then that damage carries through to the opponent. In this game, you challenge. I can say, okay, I want Mickey to challenge an opponent's character, and I can either banish that character or just put some damage tokens on them for them to be hopefully banished later. Or I can have Mickey go on a quest to gain 2 lore. I gain 2 lore. I gain 2 of this mechanism, 2 of this resource that moves me towards winning the game. 2 victory points, basically. And so it's actually a 3rd stat on this card, unlike Magic the Gathering, where the life that you're trying to reduce is almost always related to this number right here, the power, whether or not that ends up going through to the opponent or to an opposing creature. So this adds a key stat on here. This lore on any card is something else to pay attention to. So I actually wouldn't compare it to Magic's life system. I think it is a new system that's attached to this that I rather enjoyed. I really enjoyed going after cards that have, in particular, 2 lore like this one for not too high of a cost. Like Mickey only costs 4. That's a reasonable cost to get 2 lore out of when I go questing with Mickey. So I think that lore system, this new stat in Lorcana, is really cool. The other thing that I think is great, with one caveat, and I'll mention a game design a question about the game that I have in a second. I really like that almost every card in the game can be turned into what we are used to as mana in playing Magic the Gathering. Here it's called ink. So most of the cards in the game, this is the cost for me to play this card. It costs 4 ink. And most of the cards in the game, here are a few of them here, that have different costs. I have a 4, a 1, and an 8. All these also have a gold ring around them. And let me find a card that doesn't have that. I put mostly cards in the deck that do have that ring. Okay, here's one that doesn't. Simba here doesn't have that golden ring around it. So that means that for any of these cards with a gold ring, on my turn, once per turn, I can take one of these cards from my hand and turn it permanently into an ink. So I just flip it over on this side of the card. It is essentially a mana that I can use to cast cards in the game. From then on, you're tapping it, you're exerting this ink in the game, and then refreshing it at the beginning of your turn, so that it's a reusable resource to cast cards. Most of the cards allow you to do that. Not only is this great in terms of avoiding things Again, I'm comparing this a lot to Magic the Gathering. It is a dueling style game that has some strong similarities to Magic, but it avoids the whole idea of getting mana screwed from Magic, where you're hoping for a certain color, you're hoping to draw a land, and you're just not drawing it because nearly every card in Lorcana, or many of the cards in the game, have the ability to be turned into ink that you can spend to play other cards. That in itself is really, really, really cool. The other element added to this, though, is that it means that there's no cards that feel like filler in this deck. Decks must be at least 60 cards, and every card feels useful. I'm so used to Magic being like, okay, here are the cards that I really want on the deck, and I guess I have to put these lands in here too. That's not the case in Lorcana. Every card is useful. The caveat that I had to say about it is that your deck is supposed to be 60 cards. And I'm a little baffled by that design choice. In the games that we've played, in fact, I counted on the last game, after we ended the game, it was a game that had a lot of gaining of lore, but also some challenging in it. Megan and I aren't challenging each other all that much, but it's mostly a race to lore, but we definitely challenged each other in this most recent game. I had 40 cards left in my deck at the end of the game. So that means I have a bunch of cards in here that I am hoping to see, but I'm just not seeing. And it seems 60 seems high. I get in really competitive play why you might need to require decks to be 60 card decks, but it seems a little bit like they just looked at Magic the Gathering and were like, oh, okay, I guess Magic needs 60 cards for competitive play. Not talking draft, but if you want to construct a deck in Magic, it needs to be 60 cards at least. Let's make that 62. I don't think it totally makes sense in Lorcana. And so we are going to experiment. I rarely talk about house rules, but we are going to experiment with trying to play with 50 cards. Even that, technically, if we played that last game, I would have ended up with 30 extra cards in my deck that I didn't see. And I think it's okay to have some cards that you don't see, maybe even half the deck that you don't see. But 40 is a lot. I mean, 40 is an entire draft deck for Magic the Gathering. So that was a little interesting. I'd love your thoughts on that. If you've played Lorcana, do you think the required deck size is the right number? 60 just seems really high to me. A few other quick things that I think are really clever about the game. One is, two are related to the theme. I think the theme is really, really clever, both in terms of the art. I'm going to show you a few examples here. The quotes on them, the names, like Olaf is not just Olaf, he's also a friendly snowman. But in particular, two elements. One, songs. So you have cards like this that are songs. You can either cast them, you can play them for their ink cost, or you can have a character sing this song. The character has to exert, and they get to sing the song. I really like that. In addition to that, this is a clever little thing. A lot of cards in this game have keywords. I want to find something that's really, really good. One that's really good. Here's a pretty good one. So you could. A lot of these cards have keywords. Like Tinkerbell says, "loyal and devoted." The Magic Broom has something called "sweep" that they do. Yzma has something. Her quote is, "You're excused." The thing I think is clever about these keywords is that they didn't limit them to a small set of words. There are keywords like that in the game, like bodyguard, evasive, shift. There are names like words like that. But I like that they leaned into the theme with these keywords. It reminds me of the D&D version, D&D set for Magic the Gathering, where they had just a wild amount of keywords that worked thematically for these cards. I think that was a really clever design choice. And a reminder to me that if I have keywords in a game, I can also go outside that and have this secondary class of keywords where it's just a thematic phrase that I get to say as I'm using a certain ability. Last, packaging. I had two notes about packaging because I really enjoyed the packaging in Lorcana, especially for the starter packs. One, when I opened this, I was really surprised and delighted to see that the starter deck in this pack came in this paper pack. I think this is like rice paper, maybe wax paper, but it doesn't feel waxy. It's probably rice paper. It's paper. So it's not shrink wrapped. It was nicely, neatly, tightly enclosed in this. It means that I can recycle this now, and that's awesome. That's a great move for the environment. It's something that I've actually been pushing our manufacturer to do, to get a machine that does this type of paper wrapping. Two, another clever, really clever move. If you buy a starter pack, you also get a booster pack inside here. So you get that little surprise, that delight of opening a booster, not knowing what's inside, even though you know exactly what's inside the starter deck. Last, I'll end with the way that Megan and I have been playing this so far. I think, like I said, we played, 3 games in total. And the way we played it is we each opened a starter pack and we each played a game with that. And then we each opened a booster. And we shared the cards of each of our colors, because you have 2 colors in the deck. And so I was playing green and red at the time. Megan was playing yellow and purple. And so I gave her all the yellow and purple cards for my booster pack, and she gave me all the red and green cards. And then we decided which cards that we wanted to incorporate into our deck. And so every time we've played, either at the end of the game or at the beginning of the next game, we've each opened a new booster pack and added more cards to the deck. It's been a lot of fun to play that way, I really have to say, to kind of slowly open the booster packs that way, but also give them meaning in the way that we're playing, in that we get to immediately improve our deck with those cards. That has been a lot of fun, rather than opening a bunch of booster packs all at once and constructing a deck from those packs. So, recommended way to play if you're thinking about it. Get a few starter packs and a few booster packs and kind of open them slowly with the person that you choose to play with. This has been a much longer video than usual, but I don't know. I've really enjoyed my plays of Lorcana so far. I have a lot of thoughts about it, and I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below, or your questions as well, if you haven't played it yet but have any questions. Thanks.